Okay, let us recite together Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so today we are continuing the book reading from the great disciples of the Buddha, and we continue with the story of Venerable Ānanda. So the last time when we read about Venerable Ānanda is his qualities that earned him the moniker, let's say, the guardian of the Dhamma. So he was foremost in 5 categories. So amongst those who had heard much or learned much of the Buddha's discourses, he was foremost in that. And of those who had good memory, Venerable Ānanda was foremost in good memory. We all know that. He could remember all the discourses that the Buddha gave throughout the Buddha's teaching career. And then of those who had mastery over the sequential structure, so how the teachings are structured in sequence. Again, Venerable Ānanda was foremost in that. And of those who were steadfast in study, so Ānanda was very diligent in the study and the practice, even though he was very busy as the Buddha's attendant as well. And foremost of the Buddha's attendants, so prior to Venerable Ānanda, the Buddha had other personal attendants as well, but Venerable Ānanda was the one who was the most, the Buddha praised him as being foremost amongst all his attendants. Okay, so today we're going to read about Venerable Ānanda's attitude towards women. So we all know that Venerable Ānanda had a very good relationship or connection with the Buddhist women leaders during the time of the Buddha, but also in general. So because of his natural kindliness and compassionate concern, so we learn from previous reading that Venerable Ānanda's qualities, he's very kind, he's very compassionate, he's very soft-spoken. Yeah, that's his character, and that's why, because of his character, people whom he met, they can't find fault with him, so he's very likable. He's a very likable character. So because of that, Ananda was especially solicitous for the welfare of all 4 classes of disciples, not only monks and laymen, but also nuns and lay women. Without Ananda, in fact, there might have only been 3 kinds of disciples. For he was the one who was instrumental in the founding of the Bhikkhuni Sangha, the order of the nuns, as reported in the Vinaya Pitaka. So the story goes is that Venerable Ānanda actually went and approached the Buddha and requested more than one time. He said to the Buddha, we should have a Bhikkhuni Sangha. Your mother is one of those who wants to They ordained in the Bhikkhuni Sangha. And it is known that the first, I think first two times, the Buddha actually was not very keen. Yeah. But Ananda pressed on. So when many nobles of the Sakyan clan had left the household life for the homeless state under their illustrious kinsmen under the Buddha, their wives, their sisters, and their daughters also expressed a desire to live a life of renunciation under the enlightened one. Yeah, so they all felt, since my husband or my father became a monk, I also would like to become a nun. So a number of Sakyan women, under the guidance of the Buddha's stepmother, Pajapati Gautami. So the Buddha's own mother passed away soon after his birth. So his own mother's sister, Pajapati Gautami, was the one who raised him. And approached the Buddha and appealed to him to establish a Bhikkhuni Sangha. And three times Mahapajapati voiced her request, but three times the Buddha replied. So in the Buddhist tradition, so to speak, usually one puts a request to a teacher three times. And if three times the request is rejected, we don't ask anymore. Three times is maximum. Okay, so that's according to the Buddhist tradition, right? So three times Mahapajapati asked, three times the Buddha rejected. Do not be eager, Gautami, to obtain the going forth of women from home into homelessness in the Dhamma and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata. And when he had finished his stay in Kapilavatthu is the capital of the kingdom, the Sakyan kingdom, where he was born, where he grew up. And when he finished his stay there, accompanied by the bhikkhus, the Buddha left for Vesali, a distance of several hundred miles. Mahapajapati, along with several other Sakyan women, followed close behind. On arrival, she stood outside the gate of the monastery, her feet swollen, her limbs covered with dust, with tearful face and crying. When Ananda saw her in this condition and asked about the reason for her sorrow, she replied that the master had three times rejected her request for the establishment of an order of nuns. So, out of compassion, Ananda decided to intercede. He went to the master and repeated her request three times. But each time the Buddha discouraged him. Do not be eager, Ananda, to obtain the going forth of women from home into homelessness in the Dhamma and discipline proclaimed by the Tathagata. Then, so here's where Venerable Ānanda still doesn't want to give up, but he decides a different approach. Then Ananda decided to use an indirect method. He asked the master, is a woman able to gain the fruit of stream entry, or of one's returner, or of non-returner, or of arhatship, if she leaves the household life and enters into the homelessness in the Dhamma and discipline of the Tathagata? So here Venerable Ānanda didn't ask the Buddha, we need to set up a Bhikkhuni Sangha. He asked differently. He said, if a woman were to leave the household life, can they go through the stages? So can they become a Sotapanna, a Sakadagami, an Anagami, and even an Arahat if they leave the household life? And they uh, enter into the homelessness of the Dhamma and discipline of the Tathagata. Basically, we're saying enter into the Bhikkhuni Sangha, yeah? Then the Buddha said yes. The Buddha affirmed this. So thereupon, Ananda rephrased his request. So if a woman is able to do this, Lord, and moreover, Mahapajapati Gotami has rendered great service to the Blessed One. She is his aunt, his governess, and nurse, and nourished him with her own milk after his mother died. Therefore, it would be good if the Blessed One would allow women to leave home for the homeless life in the Dhamma and discipline of the Tathagata. So Venerable Ānanda here brought forth two arguments. First, he appealed to the fact that a woman in the Bhikkhuni order, could gain the highest fruit and become an arhat, a goal that can be attained only very rarely in the household life. And second, he brought up the very personal element of the meritorious services that Mahapajapati had rendered the Buddha in his childhood, which would be a good reason for him to help his stepmother now to gain final liberation. And in response to these arguments, the Buddha agreed to the establishment of an order of nuns, provided certain precautions and rules were followed. So the Bhikkhuni Sangha has also a set of rules, the Vinaya rules for Bhikkhunis, and they are a little bit more than the Vinaya rules for the Bhikkhu Sangha. Okay. So one might gain the impression from this account that it needed Ananda's clever arguments and keen tenacity to change the Buddha's mind. But an awakened one's mind cannot be changed because he is always in touch with absolute reality. What happened here was solely the same event which all Buddhas encountered, because all of them have established an order of nuns. The whole incident was not meant to prevent the founding of the female branch of the order, but only to strengthen by that hesitation the message that this brought great dangers with it. For this reason, the Buddha stipulated 8 conditions, which were so selected that only the best women would agree to abide by them. They also serve to bring about a separation of the sexes in the order in the most prudent manner possible. In spite of this, the Exalted One declared that because of the founding of the order of nuns, the dispensation would last only 500 years instead of a full 1,000 years. That is been a constant subject of, let's call debate, yeah? So whether that's true or not still remains a debate, okay? And here also, we have to bear in mind this is a commentary. I think it's commentary. So there's a 9, so we can go to, let's see whether we can find number 9. See if we can find it. Oops, whoops, oops. Oh dear, stuck. Okay. See if we can find it. This was oops. Okay, so chapter 4, Ananda, number 9. The commentaries, as well as other later Buddhist writings, try to explain the Buddha's statement so that it is not inconsistent with the continued existence of Buddhism long after the 500-year period was over. Yeah, so this is coming from the commentaries. Yeah, I don't think it's coming from the scriptures, but if anyone can find it from the scriptures, then I mean from the actual discourses itself, please let us know. Okay, let me just go back to da, 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 uh, oops. Oh, wait. Sorry. Need to go back to yeah. Okay. Excuse me. So following the Buddha's proclamation of the rules and regulations for nuns, Ananda asked him about the qualities a monk should have to be a teacher of nuns. So this is a very good question Venerable Ānanda asked the Buddha. Because if there's going to be a bhikkhuni sangha, then what qualities of a monk could qualify to teach them, right? Madam Nanda, you raised your hand, you had a question?
It's okay now. We couldn't see the screen, but now we can.
Oh, okay, now you can. Okay, good, good. Yeah, anytime, please stop me if, yeah, if the screen isn't sharing. Thank you. Okay, so the Buddha did not reply that he had to be an arhat. That's very interesting. But indicated 8 practical and concrete qualities which someone like Venerable Ananda, who was not yet an arhat, could also possess. So what are these 8 qualities? So the 8 qualities were, first, the teacher of nuns must be virtuous. Virtuous means having virtue, keeping the precepts, not just our lay people's precepts, but all the precepts of a monk should keep. That's the first thing. They must keep their precepts. Second, he must have comprehensive knowledge of the Dhamma. Comprehensive knowledge, that means he knows the Dhamma throughout. Third, he must be well acquainted with the Vinaya, especially the rules for nuns. So, of course, a monk who is, well, I mean, if a monk wants to teach nuns, then it would be better that they are very well versed with the rules of nuns. Yeah, so that they know, okay, if any nun was caught breaking one of their precepts, one of their rules, the Vinaya, then he knows how to take action. So he must be well acquainted. Number 4, he must be a good speaker with pleasant and fluent delivery, faultless in pronunciation and intelligibly conveying the meaning. So this one is actually in general, whether it's for monks or nuns, a good teacher is one who is very eloquent, very pleasant, can deliver fluently, pronounce well, and also convey the meaning. So if we think about qualities of a good teacher in general, any sort of teacher, a good teacher would be one who can express the knowledge and pass the knowledge well, be very eloquent in that. Pronunciation should be good, and they also can convey the meaning of what the knowledge of what is the Dhamma or in general knowledge well. Otherwise, they cannot be a good teacher. So this is no doubt they should have. He should be able to teach Dhamma to the nuns in an elevating, stimulating, and encouraging way. So yeah, a good teacher is someone who stimulates, who encourages the student so that the student doesn't fall behind or lose interest. Yes, Alok, you
Um,
raised.
yeah, I'm just wondering what are the precepts for lay people? What is the difference between the precepts for lay people and for the monks?
Okay, so for monks, there are, of memory, I think there are 227 in total in the Vinaya. Lay people, for everyday practice, we have five, yeah, the precepts, five. Or when we go for retreat, twin retreat, six, yeah, the sixth one is, um, so sorry, I recite this every morning and yet all of a sudden my memory failed me. So I undertake the precept to abstain from killing or harming living beings on purpose. That's the first one. I undertake the precept to abstain from taking what is not given to me. That's the second one. I undertake to keep the precept to abstain from wrong sexual misconduct. That's the third one. I undertake to keep the precept to abstain from telling lies, harsh speech, gossip, or slander. That's the fourth one. I undertake to keep the precept to abstain from taking recreational drugs or alcohol. That's the fifth one. Number six, I undertake to keep the precepts to be loving and kind to myself and all beings. And I remember in the retreat that I attended, Venerable Sister came, I added little bit twist. So I undertake the precept to be loving and kind to myself, the earth, and all beings. Yeah, because Mother Earth is going through very difficult time at the moment because we are not taking care. Yeah, so climate change is real. Okay, so yeah, so and then when we go on retreats, we can choose, well, we are encouraged to take 8 precepts as lay people. Bhikkhuni Sangha, so for the nuns, they have, I can't remember, I think it's about 320 something.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's 311.
yeah, I wonder if the Vinaya is in the Sutta Central. Let me just quickly have a look. I've never really um, gone to check Sutta Central. Let me see. It should be in the Kudaka, I think. Um, da, 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 da. Hmm. Oh, sorry. Of course it's not. It's a third basket. It's a different basket. Duh. Sorry, my bad. It's not part of the Sutta Pitaka. It's part of the Vinaya Pitaka. I was looking incorrect. Sorry. Let me just share my screen. I'll stop sharing here. Otherwise, you can't follow what I'm just rambling to myself. Give me 1 second and let me. But it's a good question, Alok, and I think it's a common question. Actually, share. Okay, here we go. So, Sutra Central is easiest because it's collected, it's structured well. Yeah, Bhikkhu Sujato and his team spent a lot of time structuring this. So we have the Sutta Pitaka, which is where we are studying a lot of Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Samyutta Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, Khuddaka Nikaya, and in the Khuddaka Nikaya, which is the minor collections, we have the Dhammapada, which is very popular. We have Udana, even Bhante Dhammagavesi has read from the Itivuttaka once in a while. Dr. Major Madhusudanji likes to reference the Sutta Nipata, which is considered one of the most earlier earliest discourses of the Buddha. And then there's the Thera Gatha, and we read a little bit of the Theri Gatha before as well. Jataka, for those who are interested, the past life stories. Jatakas are very commonly used in Buddhist Sunday schools. A couple of other stuff. There is even the questions of King Milinda, for those who are interested, that I think was made into a storybook once as well. So let's go back to the three baskets. So in the second basket, we have the Vinaya Pitaka. So here we go. So then we have the monastic law of the Theravada, Vinaya Pitaka. Mahasangika, that's Chinese. So this one is in Chinese, this one is in Sanskrit. So these are more later. Okay, so he included quite a few, but you can just refer to the earlier, the Theravada school. So we have the monks' rules and the nuns' rules. If for those interested, you can click. So they are listed in English. Very good. So there are 8. They're known as parajika, means if they commit these, they are expelled, immediately expelled from the Bhikkhu Sangha. So that's called parajika. And then there's a suspension and relinquishment with confession, and things like that. So, and then that's the monks, and then the nuns. So again, in a similar kind of structure. Sorry, there's a question. Right, Madam Nanda says 227 for monks, 311 for nuns. Okay, all right, very good. Thank you, Madam Nanda. Thank you for that. Okay, so I hope that answers your question, Alok.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, very good. All right, so let us go back to the reading. Let me share. Okay, all right. So we stopped at number 5. So the 6th one, he must always be welcome to the nuns and liked by them. That is, they must be able to respect and esteem him, not only when he praises them, but especially when there is an occasion for reproach. So this is important because if a teacher is not well liked by the students in general, then the student won't listen to anything, you know. And this is in general, not just for Bhikkhuni Sangha. This is a general application, let's say. Any teacher, if they're not liked by the student won't. If you think about, you know, some of the teachers you had in school, let's say, I'm sure you had some teachers whom you liked, you really liked them, and some teachers you didn't like. And usually those teachers that you had in school that you liked, most likely you did well in those subjects. And those teachers that you didn't like for some reason, quite likely you wouldn't have done so well in that subject. Unless, of course, you liked that subject anyway. Yeah, then that's a different thing. So this is very important. That means the student likes the teacher or has a good relationship with the teacher, not only when they praise them, but also when the teacher says something that they don't like to hear. Yeah. So yeah, so that's important. And number 7, he must never have committed sexual misconduct with a nun. So this is logical and should be the case because Yeah, you never know. There's no, I mean, of course, one can say, okay, I've committed once, I'll never do it again, but there's no guarantee, right? Because of habitual tendencies is how the brain works, yeah? So such a teacher, monk teacher who's going to teach nuns cannot have ever committed any sexual misconduct with a nun. And number 8, he must have been a fully ordained Buddhist monk for at least 20 years. That means he has 20 vasas. So usually by 20, it will be considered quite a senior monk. Okay, so these are the 8 conditions that the Buddha laid down for a monk to qualify as teaching the nuns. So since Ananda had been instrumental in the founding of the order of nuns, he now also wanted to help them advance on the noble path. And this brought about some difficulties for him. And there were 2 occasions in which nuns stood up for him without justification against the Venerable Mahakassapa. So we read about those instances in the chapter on Venerable Mahakassapa. Okay, so for those interested and missed it, you can head back to the YouTube channel and there are recordings there. Just look up the chapters on Venerable Mahakassapa, and I think his relations with the rest of the Sangha. So in those 2 instances, the both nuns left the order, and they showed thereby that they were no longer able to sustain the necessary impersonal and purely spiritual relationship with their teacher Ananda. Even more extreme was the case of a nun in Kosambi whose name is not recorded. And this is quite a famous story when we talk about Ananda, but we don't know her name. And she sent a messenger to Ananda asking him to visit her as she was sick. But in reality, she had fallen in love with Venerable Ānanda and wanted to seduce him. And Ananda mastered the situation with complete aplomb. In his sermon to her, he explained that this body had arisen because of nutrition, craving, and pride. This one has been covered before. It's read in the Samyutta Nikaya. I think, give me 1 second. Anyway, before I pause, would anyone be interested before I go and search for it though? Because it's been covered before by the chapter in the Samyutta Nikaya on how the body arises due to nutrition, craving, and pride has been covered before by Venerable Sister Kema and, if I'm not mistaken, Hugh Polton. Is there anyone who is interested in which chapter? Should I pause here and go look for it or not necessary? Okay, so I take it not necessary, so I'll continue, yeah? But it's recorded in the Samyutta Nikaya. Full detailed explanation on how the body arises, okay? But he said one could use these 3 as means for purification. Supported by nutrition, one could transcend nutrition. Supported by craving, one could transcend craving. Supported by pride, one could transcend pride. And the monk consumed such nutriment as would enable him to lead a holy life. And he sublimated his craving and was supported by his longing for holiness. And his pride spurred him on to reach what others had already attained, namely the destruction of all defilements. And in this way, he could in due course transcend nutrition, craving, and pride. But there was a 4th cause for the arising of the body. Sexual intercourse, which was an entirely different matter. And this had been called the destruction to the bridge to Nibbana by the Blessed One. And in no way could its sublimation be used as a path to holiness. Thereupon the nun got up from her bed, prostrated before Ananda, confessed her offense, and asked for forgiveness. Ananda accepted the confession and declared that in the order it was an advantage to confess one's faults and to restrain oneself thereafter. And this is an excellent example of Ananda's great skill in giving a suitable Dharma discourse on the spur of the moment in finding the right word at the right time. And another incident happened with regards to the wives of King Pasenadi. So King Pasenadi was one of the great kings during the time of the Buddha. He was ruler of the kingdom of not Magadha. Oh, the other one. King Pasenadi. Let me quickly. Oh, for some reason, I forget so many things today. King Pasenadi of Kosala. That's right. Sorry, King Pasenadi of Kosala. The other great king who was a strong benefactor of the Buddha, other than King Bimbisara of Magadha. So this one was about the wives of King Pasenadi. Despite their keen desire to learn the Dhamma, they could not go to the monastery to hear the Buddha preached. As the king's women, they were confined to the harem like birds in a cage. And that was really a disaster for them. They went to the king and asked him to request the Buddha to send a monk to the palace to teach them the Dhamma. And the king, having promised, asked his wives which monk they would prefer. And they discussed the issue among themselves and unanimously requested the king to ask Venerable Ānanda, the guardian of the Dhamma, to come and teach them. So the Blessed One, the Buddha, complied with the request presented to him by the king, and from then on, Venerable Ānanda regularly went to teach the Dhamma to the women. Now, one day during this period, one of the crown jewels was stolen. Everything was searched, and the women felt very troubled by the situation. And because of this, they were not as attentive and eager to learn as usual. So Venerable Ānanda asked them the reason, and when he heard it, out of compassion, he went to the king and advised him to summon all the suspects and give them an opportunity to return the jewel unobtrusively. That means he said to the king, okay, summon all the suspects. Whoever's the thief, they can return it and they won't be punished. So he should have a tent erected in the courtyard of the palace, put a large pot of water inside, and have everyone enter alone. And so it was done, and the jewel thief, alone in the tent, let the jewel drop into the pot. And thereby the king regained his property, the thief went unpunished, and peace reigned once again in the palace. And this incident increased Ananda's popularity even more, and thereby the popularity of the Sakyan monks. And the monks also praised Ananda as he had restored peace through gentle means. And shortly before the Buddha passed away, Ananda asked the Buddha a question concerning women. How shall we relate to women, Lord? Do not look at them. But if we see one, Lord, then do not address her. But if one talks to us, then keep to mindfulness and self-control. So this question was posed by Venerable Ānanda in view of the imminent demise of the master just prior to the preparations for the funeral. And this problem must therefore have been an important one for him. He himself did not need an admonition to practice self-control, for he had overcome sensual desire for 25 years. But again and again, he had seen how the problem of the relationship between the sexes stirred up tumultuous emotions. He must have known, too, from his discussions with the younger monks, how difficult it was to lead the perfectly pure and stainless holy life aimed at the transcendence of sensuality. He may also have had in mind the Buddha's warning that the dispensation was endangered through the foundation of the nuns order, and he may have wanted to give his contemporaries and successors a last word of the Buddha on this topic. Okay, I'm going to pause there. Any questions or comments? Whether from today's reading or from past readings or in general. No?
In
Just for the
the nowadays, almost or most of the monasteries have the monks and nuns. I know they're quite separate. So that's good news, I guess, for women.
Yeah, so it is so let's say in terms of monasteries, yeah. Usually so some monasteries, bigger monasteries, let's say, they have like a training, and it's like a training institute. And in those instances, yes, it's very clearly separated. Even building, I mean, they're not in the same vicinity even. So what I mean by that is training grounds for monks. That means especially where there are younger monks or junior monks, and not necessarily by age. So when I say junior monks, that means of any age, but they have just joined the monastic order. So they could be less than 10 vasas. That means less than 10 years joined into the monastic order. Similarly for the nuns as well. And usually these training institutes or these monasteries that train the junior monks or nuns, they are not close to each other. And I think still till today, those if it's a nunnery that has some senior nuns already, then usually the senior nuns are the one that trains or teaches the rest of the nuns. Otherwise, they can invite a senior monk of the same school, let's say, or the same lineage, let's say, to guide them. At least this is from a Theravada point of view. Alok, you have a question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering the Jatak stories.
Mhm.
Unlike suttas, are they authentic? Uh, as as much as suttas are, like for example, suttas have a tradition of oral recitation, and a lot of testing goes through, and a lot of energy goes through into authenticity to preserve the authenticity of Buddha's message and ceremonies. Does that apply to Jatak Katha, or there is some baggage to it?
That's a very good question. And my honest answer is I don't know, is my honest answer. I don't know if anyone's actually tested and verified the Jatakas. However, just to, instead of just replying by I don't know, I would say that whether it's the suttas or the Jatakas or anything else, it depends on how we want to use it. So with the suttas, let's say we are using the Majjhima Nikaya as a manual for our practice, then as how the Buddha taught us, we should apply our own wisdom and our own understanding and check the suttas and not just read it blindly for our practice. And as Bhante Vimalaramsi had thoroughly gone through the Majjhima Nikaya, he pointed out too that didn't make sense compared with all the rest of the 100 plus. Now the Jataka's tales are a little bit like, and now here I keep pronouncing it wrong, Aesop, I think. Aesop's fables, or like Hans Christian Andersen's stories. So they are designed in a way to teach values and morality to children in Sunday schools. So whether it's true, those stories really are past lives of the Buddha and his fellow monks or his family members and all that, I don't know for sure. But one thing quite, if you want to ask for proof, I don't know how I can prove this in this context, but basically in terms of past life scenario, in general, if we have a certain strong relationship with somebody, whether it's family member, colleague, friend, someone we know, and the relationship is very strong. It could be strong, likable relationship or the kind of relationship where we totally hate each other for some reason or another, okay? Usually that kind of connection, it's a kind of energy connection, isn't one-off, usually. Rarely is one-off. Usually there would have been some previous history. And so if we think about how of all the people, if we think about when we read the story of Venerable Sariputta and Venerable Mahamoggallana, who traveled for a long period of time, because they were much older than the Buddha, they traveled for a long period of time and had that faith that they will find a teacher of that quality. So that kind of faith isn't something that kind of, how should I say? There's a connection and it has to be very strong. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question correctly, Alok. Does it help? I don't know.
I think I got the gist of it. Yeah.
You got the gist of it. So my short answer is I don't know. As in, I don't know how much of it is verified, how much of it isn't. My long answer is in terms of the strong connection that the Buddha had. So of course, during the Buddha's time, there was no 7 billion people on the planet. But even if we talked about, let's say, the wider population of the Indian subcontinent at that time, or the northern Indian section of the subcontinent at that time, there were a large number of people. And of that large number of people, there were a lot of practitioners, ascetics and stuff. And out of all the ascetics and practitioners, there was the likelihood of the Buddha connecting with Sariputta, Moggallana, Ananda, and all this is what I'm saying. It's not coincidence, let's put it this way. So there would have been some amount of connection in the past. But whether that connection was truly like what the Jataka says, at one time it was a monkey, and then it was a merchant and something else, or a king and whatever, whether it's true or not, I don't know. Okay. Yeah, Madam Nanda, you have something to add?
Well, the way I understand is, as you say, the chief disciples of Gautama Samma Sambuddha, in their past lives, they have made aspirations, and because of that, as you said, the causes and conditions have come together during the time Gautama Sambuddha was ready to teach the true Dhamma. And as far as Jataka Kathas, I think some say some of the stories are based on previous lives of Gautama Sambuddha. But the purpose of the Jataka Katha, the way I understand, is to teach the virtuous life in a much more interesting way, especially to young children in Sunday schools. But as May said, we with TWIM, we primarily use the English translations by Bhikkhu Bodhi of the first 5 Nikayas. I think Khuddaka Nikaya, I think is it the first 6 books that we use?
Yeah, we don't do enough of the Khuddaka, I have to admit. But Dr. Madhusudanji does a lot of the Sutta Nipata. We've only touched a little bit on the Therigatha, to be honest. Can't remember we touched on the Theragatha. The Udana, I don't know if we have touched that, but it's not very popular. Some people do read that, Udana. But yeah, Jatakas, yes, usually for Sunday schools because it's more interesting. It's very story-like. We cannot imagine teaching even the Anguttara Nikaya, despite it being a little bit shorter. We can't imagine teaching that to kids. Um, so even the Therigatha or Theragatha, we can't imagine teaching that to kids. So that's probably the section in the 3 baskets that's most applicable to children. And it's very fun. And I think in YouTube or somewhere, I think there are probably lots of cartoons about the different jatakas by now, I think. I don't know, I haven't gone to check. But it's a very useful tool for teaching in Sunday school till today, because of the values that is covered in each story. And children learn best through, actually adults as well, learn best through stories, through storytelling. So in terms of the format, it is a very good way of teaching values to kids. If we stick to teaching them, okay, you have to pay homage to the Triple Gem, of course they do. You have to keep your precepts, and you have to do this, and you have to do that, and you have to do this, you have to do that. I can tell you, your Sunday school attendance rate will plummet, especially in today's 21st century, where teaching kids is getting more challenging. Yeah, we have to keep things interesting. Okay. Any other questions? But there is a way. I'm slowly trying to figure out. We can teach 6 hours to kids too, by the way. We just need to tweak it a little bit. Even the 5 powers, faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration, wisdom. I'm figuring that out with my music students as well. I just tweak it a little bit so it doesn't sound like Buddhism, but it still applies. Right. Any other questions? Actually, a lot of what the Buddha covered and a lot of what the Buddha gave to us really is just a most harmonious way of living. Yeah, a very balanced and harmonious way of living and dying, is what the Buddha gave us. So the Buddha gave us not just a path to enlightenment, but the Buddha gave us a roadmap, a guideline, a guideline, a structure of how to lead a very harmonious life. Till today, it still works. Sorry, again, I go off tangent. Any other questions or comments before we end the session? No comments? No question? No further? Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Questions are always good. We learn the most through questions. Bhante Vimalaramsi used to say, when we ask more questions, then if we have not gained enlightenment, we reborn again, we are reborn smarter and smarter. So ask lots of questions. I tell my students, ask a whole lot of questions. Okay. And then they ask me stuff like, does a badger have a tongue? I'm like, that's not a question related to your music education. Don't ask those questions. Ah, kids. Okay. How would I know if badger has a tongue? Ask Google. All right. Okay, so let me just share my screen again to the sharing of merits text. Sharing of merits. Okay. So we can recite together. May suffering ones be suffering free and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so I will stop the recording here.